Alright guys, Kremp again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. OpTic Tector's back on the winning train, not exactly clean against Minnesota Rocky yesterday, but Shotzzy certainly gives his reaction to it. Scrappy as well, calling out the CDL for the PCs they've been using. Is this going to be a factor in LA Thieves potentially trying to bounce back after some harsh words from JoeDeceives over the last couple of days? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. Starting just quickly from Beans, he obviously reacted to the series yesterday, Toronto taking down FaZe. The first time that a team not called Surge has beaten FaZe in a very long time, and it's happened now. Beans, as he says, seriously, somebody trade me map 5, GG's FaZe, won 4-1. Thought a pretty funny tweet, because of course they won 3-2. Not 4, well, you can't win 4-1, but the point is map 2, right? Because map 2, lots of reset cheese, Toronto were looking good, then everything was going wrong, the resets happened multiple times, eventually FaZe win the map. I think that Toronto look back at that one and say, yeah, we maybe would have won that if not for the circumstances. But they won the series regardless, so frankly he can talk as much trash as he wants. Thought it was a nice look back at down memory lane really here from Hastro. There has been questions and will continue to be when, if Envy are coming back into COD. Envy now exists again, as do OpTic, so why not get Envy back in Call of Duty? Well, there are plenty of reasons not to, I would say. Right now, the money involved, is it a bit of a money sink? Various other things. Will it happen at some point? I think it probably will, when the time makes sense for Hastro and Envy to actually make that work. But Hastro's certainly looking back, and he's clearly been thinking a bit about challenges, the state of challenges, maybe whether getting a COD team in challenges makes any sense. But yeah, as he says, back in the day, things are certainly different, these open bracket lands, compared to what they are now. I did see some propaganda yesterday between the SMGs and the ARs on the AR in the game, right? Because, there've been a couple of kills going around the last few days with the aims, people saying, damn, this gun looks pretty godlike. Neptune says it's insane as well. Now, look, do we really buy this? I don't know what you guys think in the comments below. You look at the best players in the game, they tend to be SMG players. I think the sub is still stronger, but it's not as strong as it once was. The AR is pretty good. Look, you'll get the ARs complaining about the Jackal, you'll get the SMGs complaining about the aims. When that happens at this kind of level, usually I think the meta is pretty well balanced. But a couple of comments on the Los Angeles Thieves as well, because they turned up to the OpTic facility yesterday. You guys can see here, as JP says, we have been infiltrated. And here's Ghosty rocking up, of course, Paco, HyDra sitting here as well. This was while they were kind of watching this Ultra versus FaZe thing coming soon about to unfold. The Thieves boys rocked up to the building. So thought that was kind of cool to see. Obviously people were saying, damn, they're going to be stealing strats and all this. It did raise a couple of questions. I know that Jake Hell was talking about this last night as well, on whether OpTic could have done anything differently in hindsight. Now, we don't know exactly what happened behind the scenes at OpTic, even in recent times. After they won the World Championship last year, realistically, you're never going to change, right? But in hindsight, it's one of those interesting seasons, right, when, let's say when Scump nearly retired, I mean, he did eventually retire a couple of months after, right, but after the Vanguard season, when Scump was going to retire, and he decided not to, and he was going to give it another year instead, if, they ran back the team, they brought back Illy, they brought back Dashy, and they ran it back for about a month, and then everything blew up, and it was an absolute shambles at the start of Modern Warfare 2, 2022. Now, would it have been massively different had Scump retired? Of course, Shotzzy would have probably gone to FaZe, but equally, in hindsight, OpTic may have looked back on that off-season and said, should we have ran it back? Probably not, because, they could have had HyDra then, let's not forget. Now, a couple of years down the line, they obviously win the World Championship. Now, look, was everything complete sunshine and rainbows behind the scenes at OpTic? Probably not perfect. Obviously, look, they got top 12 the previous event. So the ceiling and the floor of that team were both high and low, respectively, or whatever you want to say. Obviously, hindsight very much so is 2020, right? And people are now looking back at that team and saying, oh, well, maybe they could have tried to get Scrap. They could have tried to get HyDra at the time. Would they have had the money to do so in the bidding war? They, of course, could have been an attractive option. And had they known what would have unfolded over the coming months, I'm sure they probably would have tried. Was it a mistake at the moment? That's probably not, but it's always going to be difficult to say. Now, speaking of Scrap, this is a tweet from a couple of days ago of him calling out the league. Now, this is a pretty common occurrence in most esports, to be fair, when the players aren't happy with the quality of the equipment they are being forced to play on. Now, the league, they ain't got much bread anymore. And there's obviously talk about the PCs that they're using. So Scrappy says these CDL PCs, because let's not forget, all the players, they have their CDL PC at home or the office, wherever they play out of, and then, they've got their own stuff, they're streaming on, they're doing whatever. Now, understandably, in many cases, the pros' PCs, their personal ones, are substantially better than the ones they're playing the matches on. But Scrap goes even further to say, these are the worst PCs that I've ever used. Love using $700 computers in a professional league, might as well play on a PS5. And that's an interesting comment, especially after many have suggested over the last few years, a return to console might be a good idea. So, Parasite replies, and Scrap says these are 5 years old. And this was actually a big talking point at the Challengers LAN in Dallas, where the PCs they were using there were apparently from the Cold War season. So that's not 5 years old, but apparently the PCs they had for the Challengers event in Dallas were Cold War PCs, 2021 PCs, that weren't really up to scratch of what they would have liked. Did it work? Was it okay? Was it passable? Sure. Were there problems? Yeah. Were the players not very happy about it? Yeah. And look, that's Challengers. Like, if you're using 4-year-old PCs, okay. If that has to be how it is, then okay. But in the Pro League, like, surely that's not really going to fly. Obviously, Scrappy's talking about some of the specifications on these as well. I can't even open the game nowadays with the updates and the way that things have changed over the last few years. Some of these older products simply aren't hidden like they used to, as it were. Clay says, we used the old StarCraft ones at the start of the league and they were absolutely horrible. At least we have the old Overwatch League PCs now. We have all of Vegas's old PCs that were shipped around the US at 10 times. So far, no packing, just a PC in a box. I'm sure they're fine. That's another point right from Clay. These PCs just being thrown in a box and thrown around, like, probably not going to help them in the grand scheme of things. You should see Paco's face trying to open the game, open battle, let presses play game, nothing happens, starts raging. Been happening every day for 2 months. So checking some of the players out, certainly Thieves as well, and like Parasite says that, because to be fair, these specs from my limited PC knowledge don't sound that bad, but it's the point that they're in Alienware tank cases with no cooling and they're not optimized. I remember when we played or visited CDL teams, they didn't even have a RAM set to XMP to run at full speed. So yeah, good work from Parasite. And Scrappy says the PC should be upgraded every 3 years. I'm not asking for the best stuff, but please can I get something that actually works? So big comments from Scrappy. The league will be taking notes. They'll be looking at their budget and thinking, well, would be nice, but unfortunately, I don't know if they've got the money for that right now. And look, Activision could give them the money if they wanted, or Microsoft, whatever is going on behind the scenes over there right now, but not much has really changed, let's be real, since Microsoft has taken charge, apart from to outsource more things, which, depending who you ask, could be good or bad. Kenny was talking about the YYs, again, loads of music in the background, but kind of saying, look, it's not going to change. Kenny's happy that it's not going to change. And look, at the end of the day, as much as I find it frustrating to watch, certainly if I was a fan of the team, I'd be frustrated watching. He has won 2 world championships. He's won the most championships in the CDL era. So, look, it can happen. It's going to cost him a couple of gunfights. He admits that it's going to cost him a couple of gunfights, which surely won't be enough to try and change it. But, like, he's tried before and it's not worked out. So, I don't think that's going to change now. Falcons got clapped yesterday bad by the Surge. Aches was talking about it and says, look, with all disrespect due to the team, is this the worst AR duo that we have seen in the league? I mean, is it worse than Dahoom Wixel? I mean, possibly. Surely not, right? I mean, at least these guys have got some rings on the board. And they were probably always going to lose the series. But they played today a very important series, the Falcons. And if they look bad today, then, it really isn't a good sign for the future of this potential team. Even Scump was giving his thoughts on it. And the way that he said this was kind of interesting, because his chat was then roasting Scump for like, oh, wow, you just roasted Pred. And Scump was like, no, I didn't. But it's like the way that I listened to it, he kind of did in a way. Not roasted him precisely, but definitely made a point about Pred, because Scump says, oh yeah, well, they've got Pred on their team now, the Falcons, and we'll see how good they are. When he was on our team, we should have been good, but we couldn't even win a map. So with Pred on their team, even with a good team, who knows how it's going to go? I don't think his point is necessarily towards Pred. He's more making a general point of saying, I think what he's trying to do is make a more general point to say, well, the talent can be good, but that doesn't necessarily mean the results are going to be good. As in, you can have a team with, that's pretty stacked in terms of name value and in terms of past accomplishments, but doesn't necessarily deliver the results. I think that's the point that Scump was trying to make, but the way that he said it definitely sounded like he was roasting Pred.
Vegas Falcons, Arcides, Priesta, Exnid, Pred. Vegas Falcons, again, they're not making champs. But can they start making these matches a little bit more interesting? We've got Alec back in the league. Alec's back. Priesta finds his way onto another team. Pred, obviously, not on our team anymore. And then Xnid with 3 North American players around him. Does he go crazy is the question. What do you guys think their best mode's going to be? Nothing? Okay, nothing is crazy. Pred is getting them 1. Okay, but see, the thing about that, we couldn't get 1 with Pred, and I feel like we got a better roster. Why are you slamming Pred like that? It's nothing against Pred. It's a team game. I'm just saying. I feel like our roster is better, and we couldn't get 1 with AG. Damn, Scump just cooked AG. Dude, what the fuck are you guys talking about?
I ask you, earlier in the year, you were kind of taking to social media, telling people put the fries in the bag, kind of roasting everybody, and it backfired really bad on you, obviously, in the last stage. Have you reflected on that? Maybe some mentality changes? Because I don't think I've heard you talk about it too much since.
It's funny you say that because after I went out rogue and stuff, we went 0-18, which is insane. So, with that being said, I'm never talking shit. Everyone's insane at this game. And,
Smart kid. He learns.
OpTic, they got their win on the board yesterday. It was a difficult one to watch at times. I mean, it was great to watch, but it was a banger series and nobody knew who really was going to win. Skyz obviously clutches up in the final round, gets a 3-piece with the pistol kind of out of nowhere. Shotzzy was saying, like, I ain't going to tweet like I tweeted in January anymore. He may still believe it deep down that the way that some of these teams play is bad, but also he's got to recognize that OpTic, even with their new team, maybe with some of the chemistry issues resolved after the changes, it's not like they were playing sensational fundamental COD yesterday, and right now, Toronto, Thieves, FaZe, presumably in a best of 5, still look like the teams to beat compared to OpTic as it stands. I just wanted to kind of double down on the point that I made yesterday, right? Because Rocker are 10th in the league right now. They're at 90 CDL points, and if they'd have won yesterday, they'd have got to 100, and they'd have moved up into the championship qualifying positions. So it's not like Rocker are in real dire straits, but just to have a look at Rocker's recent games, I know they've played good teams as of late, but they started the year pretty well, right? This is the start of their season, like in the qualifiers. They started 2-0, they then lost 5 in a row. They got some decent points at the minor, they got another 10 points at the minor, they got some decent points at the major. They started the major 2 qualifiers quite well, but after that, they've been on a tear, right, of just losing. Apart from the Falcons, I mean, they've lost to Ravens, FaZe, Thieves, Surge, Cloud9, FaZe, OpTic. So, they've played good teams, sure. But still, their run hasn't been ideal. And they're on a plenty big enough loss streak right now that they need to turn it around, I would say, very quickly. And, they can for sure do that. I'm not too concerned about Rocker because, I don't think the Miami are going to be great. But, someone's not going to make it to champs, right? I mean, Gentlemates aren't making it, Falcons aren't making it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think Miami will. They certainly could, but, Miami, apart from the major, have just not really been that good. Cloud9 are looking easily good enough. Boston are looking pretty nice as well. So, one of these teams isn't going to make it, right? Like, at the end of the season, one of Boston, Heretics, Cloud9, right? Well, 2 of, Boston, Heretics, Cloud9, Rocker are not going to be making it because an OpTic as well, I guess you can throw in the conversation, but I think realistically OpTic should be fine. They've got a bit of a buffer now that they're kind of building, but it's still a little bit sketchy there. So just wanted to make sure you guys don't forget about this, that the things are going to get real tasty, and especially if Cloud9 come out and deliver the goods today, which, well, we'll see if they can do. These, then, are the games of the day. So, Heretics Falcons. That is a massive game, right? Because Miami, if they were to win, they get 10 points on the board. They get to 110. That's then 20 points ahead of Rocker, which is a pretty big deal because we've got no more minor tournaments. There's only 5 qualifiers in the major stints. Things are getting real interesting for this World Championship spot, and that's not going to change. Falcons, they need to, I wouldn't say they need to win, they need to win a hard point. I mean, if they don't win a hard point, it's cooked. I think they'll win a map, but I do have them losing the series. I don't like the Falcons team. I didn't like it when it was formed. My mind isn't going to change on that. Losing to Heretics, though, would be a bad loss, but, I mean, it's online, it's Miami, they could certainly win it. I don't know, they've got Super in as well, they've made a change, Heretics. Yeah, tough to say who's going to win this one, but I think that I would lean Miami's way. Gentlemates Ravens is fascinating, to be honest, because Gentlemates have got the new team, they brought in FeLo and Johnny. Ravens may be completely mentally compromised. This, to be honest, is this determines whether Vivid stays or goes, in my opinion, this series today, because if they lose to Gentlemates today, they're probably going to lose to FaZe on the Sunday tomorrow. I think Ravens are mentally chalked. If they win today, then they may last a little bit longer, but the whole Vivid thing where they were going to drop in for Kenny, it never happens. You know, it can't be ideal. Who will win? You know, I want to lean Ravens' way. I think they should be better. Gentlemates could get the job done, tough to say. OpTic versus Cloud9, really interesting series. Really interesting series. We haven't seen any scrims between these two teams. Look, based on what I saw yesterday, it should be real tight, but I could see Cloud9 winning, absolutely. In a Game 5, who would I take? I don't really know. And then the last series, obviously, you're going to lean Toronto's way against Boston, but, you know, even then you can't totally count Boston out. But Toronto handled business impressively at the major. But, yeah, the first and the last series, I think I know who I'm going to take. The second and the third series, I genuinely have no real idea. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.